Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. Just going to wait a couple minutes for more people to join us this evening. It's a beautiful fall Friday evening here in New York City. I hope it's nice, wherever you are as well. Cincinnati. Not sure if that exists yet in my time. No, there's something out there called Ohio, but not quite sure where that is. Just try to get back into the 18th century mindset again, thinking about where everything is and what's discovered and what's not and what's a territory and what has what name. Oh, Florida. Well, no, Florida, is there some sort of wild place? And Austin, Texas. Hello, everybody. It's great to see everybody tonight. Of course, Rhode Island, a fine rebel colony, Rhode Island. And give people a couple more minutes. While I'm waiting, I guess I will plug my next big upcoming live event, and that is Evacuation Day, and that will be November 20th here in New York City. And I'm going to, I hope, give you the link here for that in the chat. And I will also put it in the chat here on Zoom. And that is where you can buy tickets for Evacuation Day. And that is going to be held on November 20th. It's a Saturday afternoon. It will be from about 1 to 3 o'clock. And I think you probably all know that my co-host will be Mr. Alexander Hamilton in that tour. Let me arrange some things over here so I can see a little bit better. And some of you likely saw the picture I posted on social media of Mr. Hamilton and me walking around last Sunday afternoon. It was quite an experience to walk around Lower Manhattan together and see all of the people stopping us, asking us who we were and what we were doing, and promoting our tour a little bit. Now, not only will a bunch of people from my city of New York. It's good to see you tonight. So I hope all of you who are local will be joining us November 20th for Evacuation Day, because not only will it be me on the tour with Mr. Hamilton, but as you all hear me talk about all the time, and I might mention her again tonight, my sister, Mrs. Van R, will be on the tour, and this will be your opportunity to meet Mrs. Van R, who will be on the entire tour route from beginning to end with me. Also on the tour, many of you people have seen him join me as James Madison. Will be the great Kyle Jenks, who will be joining us on the tour as James Ackerman, a loyalist who is still in New York City at the end of the American Revolution. And we'll see how different people on the tour react to the loyalist Mr. Ackerman. And you may be surprised at who is sympathetic to his cause and who is not. So you'll see Kyle will be back for that. Also on the tour from Setauket, the great Bev Tyler will be playing Abraham Woodhull. And we'll be hearing all about what Mr. Woodhull, Culper Sr., the spy, is doing, creeping around New York City. And for those of you who are on the July 9th tour, David Peters, who joined us as the Pennsylvania Rifleman, will be back as the Pennsylvania Rifleman. And he is back in New York looking for his brother, who he has not seen for 7 years. And of course, at the end of the tour is General George Washington, who will be played by John Koopman, who, when you see him, you will recognize him from many different TV shows, films, and various other public appearances. So it is a great group of history interpreters for you to meet that day. And of course, just like our last tour, you're welcome to speak to everyone between the tour stops as we walk around, to ask questions and ask everyone, who they are and why they're there, and about their character. Everyone is a total professional and a great historian. So I hope you'll think of joining us on November 20th. Hello from Long Island. And to Long Island, I should say. And I hope you can join us. That tour is not going to be live streamed. I'm sorry to say, Francis Tavern does not live stream tours. So the only way to see it will be to come in person and spend the afternoon with us. So I hope to see many of you there on November 20th. Now, speaking of Long Island, last week, Mr. Q and I made the journey out to Long Island, almost to the end of the South Shore of Long Island to Center Mauritius to meet with some very good friends of ours there, where we had a wonderful 18th century dinner in the 18th century Ketchum Inn. And I've posted a short video on Facebook and YouTube about that. I hope you'll take the time to look at that. It's only 4.5 minutes. And let me know in the comments if you would be interested in attending an 18th century event, a fully immersive 18th century event where you'll come to the inn and tavern. You'll be led into the same doors the ladies and gentlemen would have come in through. You'll get a tour of the building and a full 18th century dinner. And at each table will be someone in 18th century attire talking about 18th century events, or we'll probably all be speaking about a specific event going on at that time. I hope you'll consider joining us. Probably, I don't expect that those will be held until next spring, unless we can fit one in, before the end of the year. But please go check out the video and let me know in the comments of the video if that is something you would like to come and attend, so we can get an idea. We'd really like to raise some money for the Ketchum Inn. They're doing a wonderful job restoring and maintaining the building. Wow, Wisconsin, from the old area of the old fur traders. Wow, great. So lots of great people here tonight joining us. Now, we went out to Long Island last week, Mr. Q and I, and it was a wonderful break getting away from the city of New York. As you know, things are deteriorating quickly here, and whoever could have imagined that over the last few years things could get as divisive and as awful as they are. I tell you, I can't even get a good night's sleep. I'm getting these dark circles under my eyes. They get worse every day, because it is nearly impossible to rest and get a good night's sleep without anxiety over what is coming the next day. Now, of course, things could be worse. We could be Boston, where fighting has actually begun, and some of us have actually been killed by British forces. So it is a very difficult time, and people are highly divided in the town. I can say that I am, for once, glad that I do not sell food or tea in my shop. Master Sergeant Kraft is here. Good evening, sir. It's always wonderful to welcome you from the state of Washington, which I don't think I know is there yet, but all of you know it's there. So I'm glad I don't sell tea in my shop, as the whole tea issue has become so divisive and so terrible, with the poor shop owners not being able to win either way. If they don't sell the English tea, there are plenty of people happy to come into the shop and complain that they don't sell the English tea, and to call them unpatriotic traders. And if they do sell the English tea, there are plenty of people willing to come into the shop and call them unpatriotic traders. So the poor shop owners who do sell tea, my sympathies are with them, and that they cannot win either way, no matter what they do. Lucky for me, I do not sell tea, and at least that's one thing I haven't had to deal with. Now, I have had to deal with, though, the wrath of my neighbors for entering into the most recent non-importation, non-exportation agreement. And the one I think you're probably most familiar with is the one we entered into in the year 1765, 10 years ago, to fight the Stamp Act. And that, you would call it boycott, was highly successful. So now we have entered into one again, because who would do business with a country who has invaded us and killed us? It makes no sense to any of us here in New York that we would continue to do business with a country that has decided to, rather than, hear our grievances civilly through the court system and the parliament, but to send the military to kill us in Massachusetts instead. So again, we in New York have entered into a non-importation, non-exportation agreement. And if you don't know what that means, you would call it a boycott. And that means that we have all agreed here in New York that we will not accept any goods on ships from England. We will not send any materials to England, which is very difficult for them. As you know, they need the wood and other raw materials from us. We have agreed we will not send them. We will not buy their manufacturers, and we also will not deal with ships that are English ships, only our own American ships. So this is, of course, a very trying time for us, as you might imagine that this is done at great economic hardship to all of us, because all of us, like me, want to sell things. We want to have income and we want profit. And of course, this means we will have nothing in our stores to sell. So we have had to prepare ourselves for this hardship. Excuse me. I'm going to face this way a little bit. I have a little bit of a breeze in here that I'm trying to catch, so I won't be too hot. So of course, this is to hardship, not only to merchants, but also, of course, to the ship captains who are going to have less cargo to bring and less work, and also to the companies that own ships, the shipping companies. So we have all, in New York at least, agreed to be in on this hardship together. Now, it only recently came to our knowledge here in New York through a letter from one of the Sons of Liberty of Boston to our Sons of Liberty here in New York, that in Boston, they have been unable to unite their merchants. And this seems incredible to us because it is Boston that has been invaded, and it's the people outside of Boston that had been murdered at Lexington and Concord earlier this year. So it seems impossible to us that the merchants of Boston cannot be united against England. But that unfortunately seems to be the case. And there also seems to be some difficult uniting in Philadelphia. So I say to our friends in those cities, why do you want to do business with people who seek to kill you, to make you agree by sending the military to kill you? So this makes no sense to us in New York, and we are once again united. So what does that non-importation, non-exportation agreement mean, really? Well, it means that not only do we take anything from England, but we will not wear any clothes imported from England. So we all now wear what we call homespun, everything made from local fabrics. So local linen for my chemise, local cotton and linen for my scarf. And all of us, of course, are wearing local clothes now, the ladies and the gentlemen. And woe to someone who appears on the street in imported clothes, as people will be likely to call you names or perhaps even throw things at you and insult you. And there even could be some, very terrible confrontations over this. Even our newest English governor, Governor Tryon, was smart enough to appear in New York wearing homespun. And I'm sorry to say that some of my neighbors even fell for that ruse, thinking that since he wore homespun, he might be more sympathetic to our cause. And there could be nothing further from the truth. So I say, my friends, do not fall for this type of divisiveness on the part of the English, seeking to try to endear themselves to us while they are only here to oppress and divide us. And dividing us, they have been very successful at. There are people also in this town, I should tell you, who believe that that Boston's problems, the fact that they have been invaded and that their men have been murdered, is of their own doing. They actually believe that it's Boston that is responsible for all this, because had they not thrown the tea into the harbor and been so difficult, none of these other things would have transpired. And hello to Auburn, New York as well. How can we blame the people of Boston, who were only expressing their anger at being required to try to rescue the corrupt East India Company? But many among us, and I hear that as we move further to the Southern colonies, that this idea is even more prevalent, that the problem in Boston is Boston's problem, and it will never move any further south. And Mr. Adams, even now in the Congress in Philadelphia, is trying to impress upon the men from the other colonies that this is not an isolated Boston incident, and that they will certainly be coming to our other colonies, and that we all must unite in support of Boston against them. So this is what is happening. We are greatly divided over this, with people here who, of course, have come to the aid of Boston. Some of our gentlemen have actually gone to Boston to help them fight, have gone to Massachusetts. We merchants have entered another non-importation agreement, yet some among us still are insisting that it's Boston's problem and not ours. We have a very interesting comment on YouTube. From your time that says, sounds like the more things have changed, the more they've stayed the same. I think that even from my time, I can look backwards and find incidents of this as well. I think we're talking about a very human situation here. So here in New York, I have to say that we have entered into the non-importation agreement, but there are some among us who have entered into it, but are very sneakily trying to get around it. And I will even say the name of this family here tonight, and this is the Murray family, who many of you know own the wharf at the end of Wall Street. They own that wonderful estate on the East River known as Eichenberg. Mrs. Murray is a regular customer of mine. She is a fine lady and a patriot, and you might curl out here. And it's one of the few ladies in this town who has her own private cottage and is known for her wonderful wine cellar and the excellent quality of her Madeira. One might also say that Mrs. Murray may be, shall we say, the brighter star in their family. And when you hear my story, you may agree with me. Now, it seems that Mr. Murray had a ship departing England named for their oldest daughter, Beulah. So their ship, the Beulah, departing England for America after we entered into the non-importation agreement, meaning his ship already had items on it consigned for shops here in America that had already been paid for. And so Mr. Murray, of course, was looking for a way to still be able to sell these items. Now, I think had Mr. Murray brought his concerns to the Chamber of Commerce, it may be likely that we could have worked out an agreement with him so that he might have been able to sell some of those goods, as we all understand the economic hardships involved and also the shops for which they were meant and the hardships they're undergoing. Instead, Mr. Murray took the Beulah over to Elizabethtown, I believe you call it today Elizabeth, New Jersey, brought the ship to Elizabethtown, where he had it unloaded at night, only the English goods unloaded from the ship, and then proceeded to bring the ship into his dock at Wall Street with only non-English goods on it. Oh, and our friends from Setauket have joined us. I see Mr. Billadello, also known as Mr. Talmadge, and Miss Arceri are both here from Setauket, and they have welcomed me in Setauket many times. I'm always happy to go visit them. Good friends of ours in Setauket, Long Island. And so the ship, Beulah, came into the dock here in New York. And well, our friends in the association, which is another word for the Sons of Liberty, in New Jersey, of course, witnessed the unloading of these goods and the secreting of them in a warehouse in Elizabethtown. So, of course, they sent words to their brothers here in New York so that when the Beulah came into the dock, she was met with nearly 500 angry New Yorkers, not only refusing to unload the ship, but to do physical harm to the captain if he attempted to even ask them to do so. And now here we were, New York, completely embarrassed by the Murrays, having broken our non-importation, non-exportation agreement, when here we had been speaking so proudly about our unanimity in this cause. And here we have the Murrays embarrassing us all. Well, it takes me back to 1769, just 6 years ago, when we were unanimous against the Quartering Act, and the Delancey-controlled government appropriated funds for the soldiers. And again, New York broke the unity. And here we were now, all unanimous in our pride, and the Murrays doing this awful, awful thing, trying to trick all of us. As a result, the association, the Sons of Liberty, sent the Murrays a letter that they should leave New York. The entire family ought to leave New York for the damage they had done to our reputation, and that it was dangerous for them to remain. At that time, Mary Murray, who is good friends with Captain McDougall, it is said, wrote Captain McDougall an interesting letter in which she said that if they were to be banished, they would make homeless, wandering paupers of all of the women and children of that family. And wasn't that a terrible and heartless thing for a gentleman like Captain McDougall to do? Instead, the Murrays offered to publish an apology in the local newspapers for what they had done. And now Captain McDougall, thinking it over and not wanting to be responsible for making homeless wandering paupers of innocent women and children, agreed. And the Murrays placed an ad in the newspapers in June of 1775, just a few months ago, apologizing for their embarrassing and horrific behavior against the rest of us. And for that, they have been allowed to stay. So one might say that Mrs. Murray, or Mary Murray, may be the smarter, you might say, bulb in that pack, or the smarter light in the lighthouse tower. Excuse me. So we honor Mary Murray for being level-headed enough to help her husband out in this situation. So the Murrays remain, and the English goods remain in the warehouse in Elizabethtown. Now, I have also had people come into my shop looking to see if I have any English goods that may have arrived after the agreement of the non-importation. And of course, I do not. But it is rather unusual for me that I have to have Mr. Q in the shop with me most days to ward off anyone who might be a little too aggressive in their demands that I show them bills of sale and things like that. So it is very wearying. My friend, Mrs. R, not to be confused with my sister, Mrs. Van R, but my friend, Mrs. R, has taken, I don't know if I should even tell you this, has taken to traveling around the city when she is alone with a knife in her pocket, just in case anyone tries to assault her, because as I've mentioned, she and Mr. R are printers in this town, and they have for a very long time been printing articles critical of the Parliament and the Crown and in favor of our rebellion against them. So even Mrs. R has taken to carrying a little knife in her pocket. And when she showed me, I was quite stunned, was startled to see such a thing. And then she encouraged me to do the same. And well, I have not got to that point where I feel that I'm in that level of danger yet. And I certainly hope I don't get to that point. I have a message from Miss Arceri. Well, Miss Arceri is speaking from the future, and she's asking, did Mary Murray aid the Continental Army in delaying the British crossing when Washington fled during the Battle of Brooklyn? And yes, she will do that. So I think it turns out to be a very good thing that Captain McDougall made that deal with Mrs. Murray, because it will be Mrs. Murray who will be here next fall in September of 1776, who will delay the British so the Americans can make their way to the northern part of the island and escape the British being on their way to surround them on the bottom part of the island in a triangle. So it will turn out to be very fortuitous that Mary Murray remained among us at that time. So a very smart lady, Mary Murray. I have mentioned before that the ladies of New York are not to be trifled with. We are very intelligent and very capable ladies, and know how to play our parts quite well, if you know what I mean. So we are very good at this. Now the ladies are wearing homespun, and I meant to bring a homespun skirt here into the room tonight to show you what I mean, homespun versus imported. And of course, I forgot to do it. But as I mentioned, the homespun is a much plainer type of fabric that is locally made, or maybe cotton or linen or wool, but is local and not imported. So no silks, no colorful damasks, no French métallissé, none of that. So the ladies are walking around in very, plain clothes right now, as are the gentlemen. Of course, we have some loyalists among us who are still wearing their outrageous English clothes as a sign of their I guess, non-dying loyalty to the crown and the parliament. So there are still a few of us walking around like that. But in general, we are all wearing homespun. Now, one of the things I also did when I went to Long Island last weekend, another reason for my visit, was to see what type of items made on Long Island I could have shipped to me here that I could sell in my store. Because of course, I'm running out of things to sell, and that is what I do, and I would like income. So I was hoping I could make an agreement with some of the artisans there to sell some of their goods in my shop, some of their wool, some of their linen. I saw some lovely horn bowls, some horn utensils, and very lovely horn combs for a lady's hair. So I'm hoping to be able to do some business with my friends on Long Island and sell some of their goods in my shop, and open up their market as well, for as long as we enter into this agreement. And I believe it could go a long time. I should also say that as an addendum to that agreement, the merchants have also agreed not to supply anything to British ships that are sailing to Boston that can be used as any type of weaponry. So the gentlemen like Mr. Q, who are our gunsmiths, will not send any guns. We will not send any powder. We will not send any types of swords, bayonets. Nothing made here that could be used as weapons will be sent on ships to Boston. So we have agreed, or I should say we had agreed to do that, and had an episode this summer in which a number of our merchants were secretly supplying these goods to English ships. And it was our own Mr. Marinus Willett, member of the New York Sons of Liberty, who, while standing on Broad Street one day, noticed ships that were going down Broad Street to the Whitehall Slip to supply the warship Asia. And that when he pulled back the blankets and saw what was on the ship, he saw armaments and powder on the cart, which was completely again against the agreement with the association. And brave Mr. Willett, that he is, only 21 years old, went to the front of the line of caravan of carts, and he grabbed the first horse in that caravan and stopped the caravan, backing it up all the way up Broad Street. Well, by that time, a number of us heard about it and left our shops to go see what was happening. That was only a few blocks from me here. And sure enough, there was Marinus Willett addressing the British soldiers and the British officers who'd come down to see what was happening. By that time, the Sons of Liberty had gathered, and many other ladies and gentlemen from the town. And Mr. Willett pointed out that, again, here we had an outrageous breaking of the agreement, and that there was weaponry going to Massachusetts on these ships. And he gave a stunning speech in which he asked the regulars in the British Army. Now, let me remind you that the regulars, many have even poorer lives than ours here in the colonies. Actually, our lives here in the colonies are very good compared to those. Many of the regular soldiers are people in England who are peasants, or they're peasant farmers. They're homeless in the towns. They could be prisoners in the jails, who are the regular soldiers. The officers are the gentlemen, the titled gentlemen and aristocrats. So many of these regulars have been living very nice lives here in New York, better than they would ever live in England. And it was they that Mr. Willett addressed. And he said, well, if you would like to go to Boston and shoot upon your fellow British subjects, as we are all subjects, well, go ahead, and we will gladly meet you there on the field of battle. But if you would like to come and join us and fight with us on our side, well, we will guarantee you the full safety and protection of the Sons of Liberty, of the association. And it was at that time that a number of those regulars took off their red coats, threw them on the ground, and went and stood with Mr. Willett. As many of them knew that if this is to resolve in our favor, they would have much greater opportunity for a life here than being returned to the life they had in England. And it was quite an incredible event. There are numerous portraits of it that have been painted and engravings and etchings. And so Mr. Willett is a bit of a local hero there for taking on the military and pointing out, again, one of those horrific violations of our agreement. You know, we can only win if we are together in this. We are terribly divided right now, neighbor upon neighbor, family members against family members. I mean, I am happy that I and Mr. Q's brothers and his parents, my sister and her husband and their family, we are all on the same side in this. We have no disagreement in our family. I would say Mrs. Van R. and her husband may be in some ways being even more vehement about this than am I because of where they are in the Hudson Valley there. We are all in agreement. So our family is a happy one and a united one, and united in our determination. But there are other families who are not united. I have lady friends who are married to gentlemen who have taken opposite sides in this. It is very difficult for them, very difficult that their, husbands are on opposite sides. I know young gentlemen who have taken sides against their fathers. Their fathers are very wealthy and they've taken the side of the crown, but the young gentlemen want opportunity. They want an ability to make it on their own and not be subject to the rules of Britain, and are taking our side in this. So it is a very difficult time. As I said, it's hard to get a good night's sleep. One walks around the neighborhood and, is not sure who they're going to run into and what their attitude might be at any one particular time. And I, of course, am used to living a somewhat stressful life. I am a merchant, so I do have things to deal with that are difficult. Ship captains, inventory, customers. I mean, any of you who have dealt regularly with the public know what a challenge that can be and how difficult customers can be, and that one has to make them feel they are right because you want them to return as customers, and how often it can be difficult to hold in your own feelings to be sure that the customer believes they're right. Very difficult things. That is always difficult, but I have never lived through anything like this. The Stamp Act time was not as bad as this. The Quartering Act era was not as bad as this. And the initial opposition to the tea was not as bad as it is now that the English have decided to invade our country and kill us, to make us submit. And now we are greatly divided over that. And some nights I go to bed and I tell Mr. Q that I wish I could wake up the next morning and have everything be as it was before all of this, that I could, wake up and have my bit of breakfast and, leisurely get dressed and go into my shop and, be anxious to greet my customers and make them happy and make some sales. And perhaps then in the afternoon, walk around the town and see friends, perhaps have, something at the coffee house in the afternoon with Mrs. R. But now it's just stressful to simply walk around because, when you don't know who you're going to meet and what kind of confrontation might ensue. So, a very difficult time for us, and all of us, of course, wondering how it will all work out. So I wonder if any of you have any questions or comments about this very difficult time in our nation's history, the years of, let's say, 1774 and 75, when we are somewhat united against the tea, but not united yet in our support of the suffering of Boston. And Mr. Adams, of course, in Philadelphia, trying his hardest to get the other colonies to support him. I believe he has the support, you may be surprised to hear this, of Virginia, and of course Rhode Island and the other New England colonies, but he does not yet have the support of New York. I'm very sorry to say. What is our friend Mr. J doing there that we have not formally supported Boston? And I don't believe he has the full support of Philadelphia or any of the colonies south of there yet, except, as I said, Virginia. So I will not be here to see you next week. Mr. Q and I have decided to go on a journey through Pennsylvania and do some sightseeing there. So I will be away next week. I'm not going to tell you where we're going, but if you do follow me on social media, I will be posting pictures and video, maybe a live stream from someplace that is very special to me, just as a New York historian of the 21st century. And of course, it's someplace Mrs. Q doesn't know about yet because those events have not yet happened. But I'll be live streaming as my historian self from there when we get there. And again, please consider joining us at Francis Tavern Museum. I put the link in the first comment, but I will add it here again on November 20th for Evacuation Day, which will tell, the whole story of everything that happened at the end of the war as loyalists were fleeing the country and we were all returning to New York after our long absence. So I hope to see a lot of you there at Evacuation Day. It will be truly wonderful. So thank you all for joining me tonight. I will see you in 2 weeks live with Mrs. Q, and be sure to go to Facebook or YouTube and watch that little video I did of the Ketchum Inn, and please consider maybe giving them a bit of a donation. They do have a membership option there. It's a wonderful thing to support preserving some of Long Island's 18th century history, and you really don't have to give a lot to do that. Oh, Howling Fang says he'll be in Pennsylvania this weekend. Maybe we'll be in the same town. Oh, perhaps we will. I will be traveling to a place, and Mr. Q actually is handling the traveling, but I think we're going to a place known as Gettysburg, and then places on south from there. So that is where we'll be, and I'll be live streaming from those places and talking about a different era in American history. So thank you, everybody. Have a lovely week or 2 weeks, and I will see you back here in 2 weeks. Thank you all for joining me tonight.